guys, and well, this is gonna be quite the review, huh? That's right, today we're gonna be looking at the Tsunami by Squid Industries. There are a lot of things that make this knife interesting, but the main one for me is that this thing represents some real uncharted territory for Squid and their products. This is an all-out representation of their production process with a price tag to match, clocking in at $750 starting. But does it match that price with performance? And more importantly, should you buy one? Let's find out. This video was sponsored in part by Hirsch.gay. Fulfill all your clothing needs for yourself, your friends, and your guitar at Hirsch.gay. We've also got shirts, stickers, pillows, and more. Also, support me on Patreon, please. We just hit 69,420 subscribers, and to celebrate, I gave away this green crackerakin to one of my supporters. Congrats to Lancelot for winning that. Now, let's talk about this. The Tsunami is a very interesting knife with some story behind it. It was originally announced by Lucas during a live stream, and the first time the specs were posted was on Reddit. The specs were met with some mixed feelings by the community. You see, the weight of this knife is 3.95 ounces, which is very light. For comparison, the crackerakin is 4.2 and the Squid Trainer is 4.6, so the Tsunami is much lighter than most other Balisongs. This led to some questions from the community, with one Reddit user, Hydrodon007, saying, "Will you try upping the weight? Cause I don't think people will like that weight very much for its price." To which Lucas responded, "My man, trust me." "Aight," said Hydrodon. I was absolutely in a similar boat to Hydrodon on this one. When it was first announced, I was pretty skeptical about the price, the weight, and build of this whole thing. So when Squid lended me this first production model to review at Blade Show 2021, I approached it with a critical eye. I looked it over very carefully, noticing every detail. Like a fine wine, I drank its nectar and let it satisfy my urges that every flipper has. Also, I flipped it for like a month or whatever, so I've got opinions. First up, let's talk about the design here because it's interesting.
I'm interesting.
Oh God. This is a departure from other Squid designs, yet it still fits in the lineup rather well. The handles are sleek and minimalistic with a very nice angular hole pattern, and the blade has an aggressive straight back profile, which I think matches the handles nicely, and it also kind of calls back to other Tonto designs that they've done in the past, which is really cool, but it still remains fresh and new. Originally, I actually wasn't that big of a fan of the design, to be honest. It was very different, and I think I thought it was a bit too basic looking for such a high price point. Kind of like Brandon. You have no idea what it costs to make one of these things, by the way. But the more that time passed, the more I came to actually appreciate this design. The devil is in the details, as they say, and Satan certainly lurks within the confines of my soul, so I'm into that. Some of the details that are easily overlooked are things like the packaging. The box that the Tsunami comes in feels very nice, with its silver and white aesthetic looking very sleek and cool. The first thing you'll see inside of that box is your certificate of authenticity, which is an anodized and etched piece of aluminum that I find pretty neat. Under that, placed into the custom fit foam, is the Tsunami itself, and it is a stunner from the get-go. The machining here is immaculate, to say the least. The handles are polished with flats on the side and beautiful subtle texture on the faces. I absolutely love the way this texture feels in the hand and often find myself just kind of rubbing the knife absent-mindedly, much like a supervillain with a cat. Penny, she's asleep. We can't take her. We can't disturb Penny. We can't do the gag if Penny's sleeping. She's a perfect tiny baby, we cannot disturb her. We can't do the funny gag because Penny is too good. Penny's too good for us. The blade also has very intricate milling with this beautiful angled texture across the grind and satin flats. The edge itself is hand ground and is very sharp, making this thing a great EDC as well. Etched into the blade is the Squid Industries wordmark, as well as first production and the number, which is 000. The engraving here looks perfect with very nice lines. Also included by default with this knife is the titanium pivot construction, which looks very nice and adds a pop of blue to this otherwise gray knife. I think the titanium pivots are cool, but they are also a double-edged sword. You see, titanium is softer than hardened steel. On the Mohs scale of hardness, titanium is at a solid 6, but hardened steel can range from a 7 to an 8, which which is much harder. This becomes a problem when using titanium for your screws, as most quality drivers are going to use hardened steel bits and therefore will be harder than the screw itself. The consequences of this is that it becomes much easier to strip the screws included with your knife, so extra care should be taken when you're adjusting the knife to avoid this. Once again, I do think they look cool, but it is also something that you need to weigh against potential long-term durability. But at the end of the day, I really have come to appreciate the slick, almost futuristic design of this knife, and I think it does in fact match the hefty price tag. Of course, the look of something is subjective, but what isn't is how well it's built. Of this thing is really interesting to me. Like some of the other expensive knives I've reviewed, looking at you, Fior, this thing just kinda feels premium? It's a bit hard to describe, but when I pick up this knife, I immediately think this thing feels expensive. Kinda like touching a sports car or a smartphone without a case. It's got a quality to it in the hand that you don't often get with cheaper products. This may have something to do with the polished texture, clean machining, or lightweight, but it really works. The blade is S35VN, which is a high quality blade steel that's used in a lot of GRAIL level knives, such as the Stitch Steel Alien that I have. This means that the edge retention is going to be very good overall, as well as scratch resistance. The handles are made of 6Al4V high-grade titanium, which is very nice to see. Titanium is a new territory for Squid, and Lucas told me that they spent a lot of time and milling bits to get their machining process right. And I think that paid off. Everything here fits together perfectly. The Chanwich handles match up great, and I actually really like the look of the line that they make around the handles. Performance-wise, they operate about the same as any other channel handle, and easily compare to the other channel titanium knives that I own. This knife has hidden Zen pins within the handles that I think work great, stopping the knife with a perfect handle gap both open and closed. They also feel very nice and solid, even though they aren't screwed in, which is a testament to the machining that Squid did. The pivot mechanism here is bushings, which is very nice to see, and they feel great. The swing that they provide is perfect in my opinion, feeling nice and smooth all the way through. Sadly, not everything here is peaches and cream though, as one of the bushings isn't quite perfect on one side. One of them works great, even when fully tightened, but the other handle locks up if cranked down at all. Unfortunately, this is something that I would consider a big mistake for a knife in this price range, where you would expect the bushings to be perfect out of the box. Thankfully, this is a first production knife, number 000 in fact, and in the second production and upcoming third production, Lucas has informed me that they improved fit and finish and tolerances, which is good to hear. Hopefully the later Tsunamis have better bushings, but the one binding here is a big annoyance. I am glad to say though that that annoyance doesn't ruin the experience with this thing. The construction of the pivots means that they don't loosen easily, so after I found the correct tightness, I haven't had to adjust it again. Now, because this is an early production knife, there have been a couple changes made for upcoming batches. Lucas said going forward that the Tsunami will have a sharpening choil at the end of the blade for easier sharpening, as well as jimping on the handle ends for more grip, and an option for wave engraving on the side of the handles for extra grip. This is all a great idea in my opinion, and I love to see them rapidly improving the design based on community feedback. But that's enough of all this build talk. I'm sure you want to know how it flips, don't you? Well, you can't. All right, fine, I guess I'll tell you. I had very mixed opinions when I first handled this knife. It was much lighter than anything I was used to, which was weird, but it didn't feel bad either? The first few days that I flipped it, I went back and forth between liking it and being weirded out by it. Finally though, my brain eventually got used to it, and now I find it to be especially pleasing to flip. The factory balance of this knife is incredibly neutral, which I really love. I would say that this thing had a similar adjustment period for me as a Squiddy, but after some time I found that I really love flipping it, much like the Squiddy. It's got a unique flipping experience, feeling so solid and light at the same time, and I think that's exactly what it should be. Now that I'm used to it, I can perform intricate tricks really fast, and it's really satisfying to do so. The knife bounces off your hand effortlessly because of the low weight, but the handles still carry momentum really well. One nice thing about the bushing bushings here is that while you can go fast with this knife, you don't have to. They make it great for doing slower, more relaxed flipping at the same time as they do for quick flips. Also, aerials are fantastic on this thing, with the handles easily gliding through the air. Chaplains are comfy and easy to perform and hold for an extended period of time. You just keep going.
Stop!
You just keep going.
Going too fast!
No. You just keep going.
Stop!
Parabolics on this thing are a little weird, however. I think in part due to the bushings not being perfect, as well as the very light weight. Performing parabolics on this can be tricky, and sometimes one handle sticks through the trick. This might just be on my model, but it's something to be aware of nonetheless. Also, palm spins do work well enough, but it's a little hard to control them with the overall light weight. However, I'd say what this thing is good at is traditional style flipping, and when I say good at, I actually mean fucking amazing. Rollovers, fans, combos, and chokers all feel incredibly easy to pull off. This knife really just listens to whatever you tell it to do and feels great while doing it. In terms of a premium feeling flipper, I would say this hits the mark great. The only complaint I really had about the flipping experience is that at first, it gave me a bit of squiddy syndrome when I went back to my other knives. Squiddy syndrome is what I call the adjustment period between flipping a squiddy and then trying to go back to a heavier metal knife. The heavier knife feels very heavy and slow to flip all of a sudden, which is annoying. However, squiddy syndrome is pretty easy to fix, as all you have to do is go between your knives more often until you get used to it. For me, I can easily go between flipping any knife in my collection and a squiddy without a problem, just because I got used to it. Once my tsunami syndrome period had passed, I found myself very attracted to flipping this thing, especially after carrying a heavier Balisong for the day. The effortlessness that this thing has while slinging it around is honestly very nice. My last gripe is that while the polished surface looks amazing, it is a bit slippery for flipping. Polished titanium is a bit grippier than shiny anodized aluminum, however, but not by much. I think the grip that the textured faces have is great, but the sides are a bit too smooth, which I'm glad that they addressed in the later revisions. But of course, I'm the kind of idiot that would spend a lot of money on knives normally, so I think in discussion of this grail, it's good to have a second opinion. Isn't that right, Doctor?
By God, it's terminal!
Oh, good.
A doctor is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. Anyway, welcome to Dr. Baker's Balisong Corner. We've been expecting you. Have a seat. Okay, you're already sitting? Okay, well, fuck. Whenever I'm not trying my hand at being a doctor, and also not sleeping in your bedroom closet, sometimes I occasionally like to flip a Balisong. I'm still very much considered a beginner, so trying to accurately judge a $750 knife seemed daunting at first. So I'm gonna try to keep this brief. It's not going to be. Cause if you want to watch me ramble about a squid product for 16 plus minutes, it's right there. There's a video, it's right there. It's pretty good. Despite my limited amount of experience flipping Balisongs, I can tell you right off the bat, this is a great flipper and a great knife. Just the particular way it's machined, the texture on the handles, and the design itself really stands out to me, especially while we were shooting the B-roll for this review. The way it captured and reflected light is unlike any Balisong we've ever reviewed. So I really like that. In the about a week that I spent with it, it flipped great. I never had to adjust it, never had any tap issues, anything like that. But we're talking about a $750 knife here. And as someone who hasn't ever spent more than $300 on a Balisong, and considering even that to be a very high price, a lot of the intricacies of a product like this are admittedly kind of lost on me. A lot of Will's thoughts in this review focused on the very technical aspects of the Tsunami. If it's a good flipper, and if, for him, it's worth $750. And as we learned, yeah, it's a great Balisong. However, once you enter this kind of price point, I feel that the conversation has to shift a little bit. When buying cheaper knives, there's a very noticeable difference between something like a $20 Balisong and one that costs $50. And then there's an even more noticeable jump in quality when you go from, say, $100 to $200. Those price ranges generally represent the amount of money being spent in terms of the actual flipping experience. But would I say that this $750 knife is double the quality of flipping of a $375 Bally? Unfortunately, No, not really. While this does have a very unique feel in the hand, there are a lot of knives I would pick up before this one. A Balisong like this, for someone like me, exists more within the realm of spending money primarily for novelty, personal fulfillment, and exclusivity. It would be like spending over $100,000 on a car, over $300 on a bottle of alcohol, $50 for a single pizza, or more than 69 cents on a clone of me. By that point, in all those examples I laid out, you're not necessarily getting something that performs or tastes better for that price over something even half or a quarter of the price. You're buying it because you like the look, or it has a cool story to you, or you enjoy the pride of owning it, and truthfully, probably like the attention that it brings you. And while the Tsunami isn't exactly that for $750, and there's no shame in spending money on things that you like, it falls within that realm of just being a specialty kind of deal. So for someone like me, who's still learning tricks and doesn't even have that much time to flip Balisongs anyways, I would not drop this kind of money on a Balisong. I would spend that $750 on 2 or 3 still very high quality, decent knives that I could get different feels for, versus dropping this kind of cash on something where a lot of the complex build processes and material and design choices are mostly lost on someone like me. But I understand all that seems very negative. I want to be very clear that this thing has me very excited. Something that's fascinated me since I joined the Balisong community is that it's still very, very niche and an ever-evolving market. There is not a tried and true path that a Balisong maker needs to follow in order to be successful. There's of course generally accepted things that most of the community enjoys, but I don't feel there's a single Balisong maker that's come close to perfecting the experience of making and distributing Balisongs. So when it comes to the Tsunami, what has me excited is seeing Squid Industries explore new horizons. They've done a really good job of making flipping more accessible thanks to entry-level options like the Squiddy, or high-quality options like the Crack-A-Rackin' or Squid Trainer or Nautilus, etc. But they haven't made a knife that is truly high-end like the Tsunami. And as I've seen happen with other makers, take the Balisong Z for example, whose design started as super high-end and then was brought down to be more accessible, while this Balisong is as expensive as it is, it serves as a template for Squid to explore what kind of products they can actually make, and how they can make expensive designs like this and make it more affordable for someone like me that doesn't have the desire to spend boatloads of money on Balisongs. Because truthfully, at the end of the day, just as Will and I are just 2 dudes exploring how the fuck to make YouTube videos, Squid is also having to forge an uncharted path of how to make the best Balisongs that they can. And that is what has me excited for the future, is where do we go from here? As for where I go from here, I believe that about, oh my god, 37 of my clones have died on the operating table. So I am going to get back to that. Oh my god, I'm getting a call. Hello? Oh my god, Claude 420. He drank a gallon of PCP? Is he okay? Is he doing all right?
CNN these nuts. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. At the end of the day, this isn't a knife that I would suggest to just anyone. If you really like the design, want a unique experience, and have $750 to spend comfortably, then I would suggest it. But otherwise, I would not buy it. But would I buy it? Yes, absolutely. I went into this review being skeptical, but I came out of this review thinking, damn it, Lucas, now I have to spend like 800 bucks, you dick. The overall experience of this knife has become something that I want in my collection all the time, and therefore I am willing to pay the premium for it. Speaking of which, thanks so much to our incredible Patreon supporters for fueling my terrible habits. Reaching the milestone of subscribers we did and giving away this Crack-A-Rackin' was really awesome and is only the beginning of what's to come. Check out some hilarious behind the scenes of these videos or hang out on the private community Discord server with cool folks like Hidden Pants and Cody, the Baron of Bovine Husbandry. Tiers start at just $3 a month and every bit gets returned to the Balisong economy eventually, to the behest of my husband. Not Brandon. Brandon's not my husband. Remember, follow me as @TheWillHirsch on Instagram and @TheBrandonBaker too. We both post cool videos and images about the videos we're working on, so it's a great place to be updated. But that's pretty much it. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm late for my appointment.